Shalom, family, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news updates. Always a pleasure and a privilege when we get together on these weekly news updates. And I'm thankful for all of you who share the links and continue to um, gather together with your brothers and sisters. That's a really important thing for us to be doing, especially in these last days. And the scripture tells us to not forsake the assembling of ourselves together. So this is another way that we do that is we come together and we collaborate, we compare notes because we're coming at things from a scriptural point of view, right? So we're looking at things with that paradigm. And that is a different paradigm, of course, than some other people might be looking at events. And so that's why it's important that we get together as students and disciples and followers of Messiah and be on the lookout for different things, right? So different scriptural prophecies, biblical events, and so forth that help us note, just really where we are and how close we are to the end of the age, right? So that's why we watch. It's one of the great things that we're commanded to do. And for those of you that are joining us for the first time, you may not know this. I don't know if you do or don't, but we do have a website called remnantwatch.com where we put all of the stories that we're watching and keeping an eye on. And you'll notice a banner at the top that'll always take you to the latest broadcast. That'll bring you right here, right where you are right now. So, down here, you'll notice we do have our survival guides on here. Just wanted to remind everybody of that, obviously, right there for you. And there's this great search bar. And that's important because sometimes you're looking up stories that we've already covered, and you may want to go back and take a look at different stories and how they're tracking from before to now. So definitely things in the Middle East, for example, things concerning Israel. You can watch how we got here just by searching just Israel, for example, and see some of the stories that we've been tracking up to this point. So that really is a really interesting perspective because each topic that you type in, you're going to see just how we've been watching certain things. So it's a very interesting little tool for those that care for such things and care to dig in. Others maybe are satisfied with just the summaries. I personally don't like to dig too deep. I think you can get lost in the details. And one of the things we like to say around here is we want to be informed without being overwhelmed. And that is easy to do. And so we try to avoid that and try to stay together in a very positive way. And, the scripture tells us in Psalm 2 that the Most High sits in the heavens and laughs at the plans of men. And so you may hear us chuckle a few times at certain things and make light of certain things, although they're very serious. But that's just our way of taking note that no matter what man plans, the Most High will have his way. And on that note, let's get into the news. And tonight's top story is that Iran is loading missiles into their launchers after Trump delivers a threat to Tehran. So we are seeing a dramatic increase in the threat level that is going on in the Middle East. And this is a really important thing for us to keep an eye on, folks, because the Bible, of course, the scripture is written from the Middle East's perspective. So those of us in the West or in other parts of the world, you may not see things the same way as you would from that perspective. So very interesting and very important that we keep that in mind. And here in this story, Iran is loading up missiles onto its launchers after Trump's threat. They are going after it, and Iran has reportedly loaded missiles on launchers and ready for retaliation. So there's going to be a quick tip for Tad. According to state media, the threat follows U.S. President Donald Trump's warning of bombing if Tehran refuses a new nuclear deal. Newsweek has reached out to the State Department and Iran's foreign ministry for comment. And why it matters? Well, the U.S.-Iran standoff has grown more perilous since President Trump's return to the White House. And Iran views Washington's maximum pressure policy, characterized by severe economic sanctions and military threats, as a provocation that has only deepened tensions. And so now here we are at the precipice of yet another conflict that none of us wanted or are pushing for. I'm pretty sure the Iranian people aren't interested in swapping bombs. I'm pretty sure I speak for most Americans. We're not interested in swapping bombs with anybody. And so what's going on here? And you all have to remember that there was a prediction made that there would be a third world war. And funny that the players predicted to be part of that world war are in fact showing up right on cue. And Iran, of course, is threatening to bomb, or I'm sorry, Trump is threatening to bomb Iran unless they end nuclear weapons program and begin talks on a new deal. So nothing like bullying people to the table. I'm sure that will be just wonderful. What could go wrong? The president says the U.S. officials in talks with the Iranians, and he's basically saying you either do it or we're going to bomb you, right? So President Donald Trump's overtures via a letter to the Islamic Republic of Iran Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei to jumpstart talks on dismantling Tehran's illicit nuclear weapons program were met with rejection by the theocratic state on Sunday, following Trump's latest threat to the regime. So as he's threatening and as we're seeing more and more escalation of the war of words, what do we know occurs just before the kinetic war? The war of words is what we always take note of. So as we start seeing that war of words, as we start seeing more of this kind of rhetoric, you're wise to prepare for conflict. Okay, so prepare for conflict now, because this isn't going to go away anytime soon. And we're seeing the U.S. bunker bombers are being positioned in the Indian Ocean. So this is a theater of operations whereby they can access Iran quickly. So you will probably see greater naval presence in the region in the Indian Ocean. And here the U.S. bunker busting bombers positioned in Indian Ocean as Trump sternly warns Iran. And President Trump warned Iran that if Tehran's regime doesn't negotiate, things will go very badly. Trump's warning is the latest signal that military action by Israel and the U.S. may be the next major event in the Middle East. The president's comments came in an interview with NBC News over the weekend. He stated that the Iranians don't make a deal. There will be bombs. There will be bombs like they've never seen before. So apparently we found a good use for a bomb. The bomb is used to force people to come to the negotiating table, or we'll bomb you. Well, the Houthis found a good use for bombs, and the Houthis started launching missiles at U.S. aircraft carrier and Israeli airport in a huge blitz that just happened. So this is starting to heat up. This was last week, so this is leading in to the events that occurred. So this just occurred in this last 7 days, in a dramatic turn of events. The skies over the Red Sea witnessed a tense confrontation as missiles streaked towards an American aircraft carrier. And as a matter of fact, we've got footage showing that that carrier was in fact hit. The Houthi rebels have launched an attack against an American aircraft carrier and an airport with 2 missiles targeting the American assets. So if they thought by threatening Iran and the Houthis that was just going to work, and they were just going to run in fear, this is a setup, folks. So they were bolstered and strengthened with the intention of being the enemy at this time, used for a purpose. So Trump's threat to bomb Iran would spark retaliation, its supreme leader says. Trump's reiterated his threat that Iran will be bombed if it does not accept his offer for talks outlined in a letter sent. So he is making it clear. This is coming out on multiple news fronts. So we are being multi-blasted, voice blasted in stereo that a war is occurring and is going to occur. And the forces on the other side are not backing off. Okay. And so you're seeing Yemen escalating Red Sea confrontations with 3 attacks on the USS Truman in the last 24 hours. So Yemeni Armed Forces spokesman Brigadier General Yashia Shari announced on Sunday that rocketry force, drone units, and naval forces targeted U.S. aircraft carrier USS Truman and hostile warships in the Red Sea 3 times over the past 24 hours. And I remember hearing Colonel McGregor commenting about this, and of course, commenting about basically the essentially the ineffectiveness, perhaps, of um, the technology which once ruled, if you will, the aircraft carrier, is no longer the dominant military power that it once was, I suppose. It was basically his point, and not a bad point to make, as we're seeing imagery of the um, deck of the aircraft carriers taking damage. And so we can't say that they are now the same dominant force they were, for example, in World War II. They're pretty easy to hit. And so this is starting to become a much more dangerous confrontation, and the tit for tat is growing. And you guys all know that whenever there's a tit for tat in the schoolyard, a fight usually breaks out. So whenever there's pushing and shoving, usually a big fight breaks out. So that's kind of where we're headed, folks. And that, unfortunately, is not a good sign. And speaking of not good signs, staying in the region, Israel, of course, many of you are paying attention to the events that are going on inside of Israel. So besides the events that are going on around Israel, besides the events that are going on militarily, perhaps with Egypt and with Syria and with some other confrontations, and of course, Gaza, there are problems going on inside of Israel. And this is really, I believe, the true existential threat to Israel's existence. It doesn't come from the military outside. It comes, I believe, from internal strife happening right now in Israel. And the editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post, questioned by Israeli police in connection with the Qatargate case, and currently under police investigation, still under ongoing. Netanyahu's advisors have been detained or are expected to remain in custody. So now they're starting to detain the prime minister's key personnel. And as you read about these stories, again, these are all on Remnant Watch, so feel free to take your time and get into these stories. What you're going to find is that they're starting to tighten up on the prime minister, and they're tightening up their investigations on some of the October 7th activity, which is very suspicious, as we've talked about for now a year and a half. We've got questions. Again, I think a lot of people had questions, and continuing to bomb and do things is no longer working as a distraction, folks. So Israel strikes Beirut for the first time since November ceasefire. Attacks in retaliation for rockets launched from Lebanon follow weeks of mounting hostilities across the Middle East. So it's not going away. Israel attacked the Lebanese capital Beirut on Friday for the first time since a November ceasefire. And one of the things that I'm concerned about is how much of this is wag the dog distraction. We continue to see things that make us wonder about them. Now, normally we look at different sections of news and sections, and we tend to stay in certain areas for a while. We've been talking just about military confrontations. So what does this have to do with a military confrontation? What's this got to do with anything? And so one of the ways in which I have a very, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm very suspicious of this. Smell of death. There's a lot of things I smell here. Smell of death permeates Myanmar cities after quake kills over 1,600 and leaves countless buried. And if you guys have seen this, this is horrible footage. The smell of decaying bodies permeated the streets of Myanmar's second largest city on Sunday as people worked frantically by hand to clear rubble as the hope of finding someone alive in 2 days of a massive earthquake struck that killed more than 1,600 people and left countless others buried. And it was a 7.7 magnitude quake. Actually, I think it was over 8. I think they've downgraded it to 7.7. And relief efforts have been hampered by buckled roads, downed bridges, and spotty communications, and the challenges of operating a country in the midst of a what? A what? Yeah. Common crisis brings people together. So it's one way to end conflict. It's also a way to threaten non-cooperative parties. So here we saw a 7.7 magnitude earthquake rock Thailand, Burma, collapsing buildings, killing more than 1,000. And video captured apartment buildings collapsing in Bangkok, Thailand, following earthquake. What makes me so suspicious of this is the absolute almost indifference that seems to be being paid to this colossal catastrophe. Oh, it's being reported in the news, all right. You're hearing about it. But you're not seeing a massive relief effort, aren't you? And I have not seen the kind of relief effort you would have expected to see. Now, why is that important? Well, it depends on what it is. And I believe that we are seeing a multidimensional confrontation. This is why we were warned by Messiah that we would see earthquakes in diverse places. I believe that we're seeing the exercise of powers that are, in fact, biblical. There's no other way to say it. So we're going to continue to see things like that. That massive 7.7 magnitude earthquake rattled Thailand and Burma, as well as Bangkok. So we've got other places that were hit. You also had another one, an earthquake near Tonga, which triggered a 7.0 magnitude. That earthquake triggered tsunami warnings near the island nation of Tonga that led to tsunami warnings. And so a strong 7.0 earthquake rumbled near the island of Tonga, causing a tsunami warning for the Pacific island country. And again, these are not necessarily that unusual for there to be earthquakes and so forth. However, something about this is suspicious to me. Now, maybe some of you have your spidey sense tingling as well, like you're going, wait a minute. There's something about this story I'm not quite sure, but I have a feeling, guys, we're just going to circle this. I think we're going to end up coming back to the earthquake story. I have a feeling we're coming back to that story sometime in the future. We're going to find out more information about this. And this is kind of why I see this, because there's a lot of the use of the word force. And whenever I see patterns, guys, one of the things that we try to do is we try to detect patterns happening in the 10,000 foot view, revealed by the Telegraph. This just came out on the 27th, that Trump's plan to force Ukraine to restore Putin's gas empire. America holds gun to Zelensky's head with unprecedented reparation demands. Donald Trump is holding a gun to the head of Vladimir Zelensky. And of course, these guys are apparently left-leaning, so they're going to denigrate this. But demanding huge reparations payments and lay out a claim half of Ukraine's oil, gas, and hydrocarbon resources, as well as almost all of its metals and much of its infrastructure. So much for victory. Ukraine thoroughly lost, and this is turning into a bit of a fiasco. Now, as a matter of fact, Vladimir is, he's not exactly cooperating, so this is getting done. Says that he's running out of patience with Putin, because Don's got his own plans, he's got his own stuff. He wants to announce things. He wants to do things. He wants to be remembered a certain way. He wants to win the Peace Prize, right? Okay. So these things are bothering him quite a bit. Well, it's predicted there will be a leader that news will trouble them. So that's interesting. And so running out of patience with Putin, Finnish leader warns as Vlad says he's ready for more talks. And of course, they're going to go back and forth for a while, but a lot of this is nonsense and theatrics. So again, remember that, folks. So don't try to get too caught up in it. I mean, I don't think they're playing golf while they're talking about World War III. So if this were real, they'd be in a bunker. It would be very, very different. And I think a lot of it is geopolitical positioning. And I think they see through some of each other's plans too, as you can see some of the hints. Like, Putin is saying, "Hey, I see what you're doing with Greenland," right? And so it's almost as if they're talking to each other through headlines and through various events to negotiate, to discuss how the world is going to be reformed. And Russia's Putin says it would be a profound mistake to dismiss Trump's push for Greenland because he understands what Trump's doing. Russian President Vladimir Putin warned it would be foolish to dismiss U.S. President Donald Trump's push for control over Greenland. His comments, which were not critical of Trump's intentions, came as Vice President J.D. Vance prepares to lead a high-profile U.S. delegation to Greenland on Friday, which was not warmly received. So somebody forgot to tell Greenland they were being taken over. It's not going well. So that's kind of interesting. I won't be surprised if there isn't some type of military action that ends up taking Greenland if they aren't cooperative, because they do seem quite bent on having it. So this is interesting. And we're going to continue to see more confrontations with especially European powers. And so the attitude of the Trump administration, folks, for those of you that are catching up, is that the Americans are being taken advantage of and they've been abused, right? And so the trade-off for that was the use of the American dollar in the international trade. And so Trump's pushing back may actually backfire, but he doesn't care. He doesn't care. How do I know? NBC Politics tells us Trump says he couldn't care less. So there you go. He tells you himself he couldn't care less if foreign automakers raise prices due to tariffs. In a phone interview with NBC News, President Donald Trump also said he wouldn't fire anyone involved in the Signal group chat. So, all this big hullabaloo they're making about that isn't going to go anywhere. And he told NBC News in an interview on Saturday that he would not fire anyone involved in the Signal group chat in which military attack plans were inadvertently divulged to a journalist, and added later that he couldn't care less if automakers raised prices because of new tariffs. And so this is indicating his absolute commitment to his America First policy, and it is governing a lot of his decision-making. While this is good in some respects, it is also causing other countries to adopt their own our country first attitude. And while that can be good in some respects, it's going to cause a lot of retaliatory behavior. So we should expect to see volatility going on in the markets. Now, some of you may have noticed that some of the alt currencies all of a sudden took a slam. Well, that happened as a result, I found out, because of China dumping a bunch of the Bitcoin back into the market that they were holding. Now, many people saw that as a negative thing, but I don't. I believe that that's part of an ongoing negotiation that is going on between these two countries that you are not privy to. But what I see, and this is just my observation, my 2 cents, take it or leave it and throw it away if you like. But it looks to me like there's an ongoing negotiation going on. And so the release of their Bitcoin means that Bitcoin is available to purchase and absorb. So I don't think it's coincidental that not only did the price drop and the markets were depressed, but at the same time, coincidentally, just by accident, and God, nobody knows why all of a sudden, but, just coincidence. I just love coincidence. Don't you guys love coincidences? The White House says gold reserves may be used to purchase Bitcoin. Okay. So if you don't think these things are coordinated, you're just not paying attention. It's too much money for it to not be coordinated. Okay. A senior White House official has hinted the possibility of the U.S. utilizing its gold reserves to acquire more Bitcoin. So trading Bitcoin for physical gold, which China is keen on. They are keen on physical gold. So that's an interesting development. And of course, the digital world isn't going anywhere. So those people that thought that Bitcoin was disappearing, that just isn't going to happen. Well, I should say crypto isn't going to disappear. Who knows? One token or another might. But as far as the crypto space is concerned, it's a ledger, folks. It isn't going anywhere. A ledger doesn't go anywhere. It's just bookkeeping. So now you're starting to understand how their monetary system actually works, and you're realizing, oh, it's all ledgers. Okay. Speaking of ledgers, this man's trying to, welcome to the show. This man's trying to add some stuff to his ledger. He's not ruling out of seeking a third term in the White House. Talk about becoming a king, right? Making himself a little bit more than a president. So he's looking at breaking the constitutional rule of only 2 terms and maybe making a point in the process, folks. President Donald Trump said on Sunday morning phone call that he was not joking about a third term, adding that it's far too early to think about it, but not ruling it out. And I think that's actually, there's a lot of push for that, which is an interesting thing, especially in American history, because that has been something that has only happened on rare occasion. So it would be a very rare thing indeed. But if we are in the midst of a massive international war, there's a good likelihood that could happen. After all, think Zelensky, his term ended and he's still president. How in the world anything he signs is legit? I don't even know. So that's a whole nother thing. Speaking of war, we're in an economic war, whether you like it or not, folks. And that Bitcoin announcement was a salvo in that war. And many people saw the massive dip. Bitcoin was over 100,000 and went underneath. I think it went below 80, I think, or close. And now, of course, we'll start to climb once they dump theirs. So they only get to do that once. It's not something they get to keep doing. So once they've dumped it and it's absorbed, and those coins are no longer in the market, so then you'll see it rise, because governments are counting on it to pull themselves out of their debt. So that's how you know it's not going to go anywhere, because the governments are buying it. Once that started happening, you guys can do the math from there. Okay. So it isn't going anywhere. You can decide whether it's good or not. You can decide whether you like it or not. I don't know. All that you can talk about. Whether it's going anywhere, yeah, the entire space isn't going anywhere. It's literally part of their next system, which has good and bad in it. So something we have to be aware of. And as a matter of fact, something big has to happen, because there's massive indicators that we are headed toward a major recession here, if not depression. Recession indicators now raising alarm in the U.S. So there's a lot more concern. While the Trump administration is optimistic, and they're always going to be optimistic, folks. That's what they do about the country's growth prospects. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick going so far as to say America should absolutely not prepare for recession. I think he's nuts. I think that's crazy. I think not being prepared for the absolute effect or the dramatic effect, that wholesale effect, that's going to be a changeover in the economy. I think we've already seen the amount of volatility that can and will manifest. So it is far wiser to be prepared for a recession and get surprised by wonderful days than be prepared for wonderful days and get surprised by depression and recession. And speaking of depression and recession, people that make their living on TikTok are hoping they're not going to get depressed. And how many know that a lot of the economy in the U.S. relies now on TikTok advertising, marketing? This has now become integral in a lot of the marketing effort that is being done online. And so TikTok days are numbered. Remember, it got banned, and TikTok days in the U.S. are numbered unless the parent company, ByteDance, strikes a deal to sell the social media platform by Saturday, April 5th. Oh my, what an interesting week that this has to happen in. And why is this pivotal? I'll tell you why. Because again, like I said, if it's shut down, this one app is going to have a massive impact in the U.S. economy. And you say, why is that? Because a tremendous number of people, not just directly from the app itself, but indirectly benefit from this marketing and advertising tool. So if you remove it from the economy in one move, well, you saw why he immediately reinstated it, because the impact was felt almost instantaneously. And so understand that this is a serious threat, and they are now negotiating with China. And China has them. They've got things they want. So now they're back and forth with China on whether or not they're going to be able to come to a deal. And they've given them a deadline of April 5th. April 5th. Wow. Interesting. Don't you find that interesting? I personally, I'm just me. I look at dates, especially in accordance to certain things. So I find it fascinating that was the date they decided to pick. I think it's fascinating that our modern day leader of the free world has determined that April 2nd is going to be a Liberation Day. What a coincidence. On one particular calendar, April 2nd is the first day of unleavened bread. That's the day Israel is released from its captivity. Kind of interesting, don't you think? A lot of interesting things going on. We've been watching this unfold. How many have been really thinking hard about whether you're going to fly again? Well, Delta flight heading to Minneapolis involved in a close call near Reagan Airport. So even in the middle of the beautiful places where nothing bad happens, okay, it's the Midwest is like flyover country. Nobody talks about it. Nothing happens there, right? Well, Delta passenger plane headed for Minneapolis avoided a close call Friday as a U.S. Air Force jet, according to CNN. And so, I think a lot of people are starting to ask questions about what is going on with all these reports on air travel. We keep seeing more and more of them, and we keep seeing things that we can't explain in our skies, right? So I thought the Pentagon cleared up the matter on the drones. Did you guys? I thought they had sort of resolved it, but apparently not. Pentagon is still mystified as the drone drama deepens. Houston, we've got a problem. Objects exhibiting advanced technology continue to fly with complete impunity over sensitive military installations and critical infrastructure, despite the Pentagon's advanced imaging and sensor capabilities. The nature, purpose, and origin of these enigmatic craft are unknown, raising an array of pressing national security concerns. You mean to tell me you can't take those out? Oh, brother, we've got issues. And you're out poking fun and poking fights. You're out poking fights with other countries, ready to go to war, talking about bombs like you've never seen. You can't even take out drones that are flying over your own installations. Who's buying this? You buying this? Who's got questions? I got questions. Here's a question. If you intend to take on a country, 13,000 miles away, don't you think you should take out the enemies flying around your own bases? Just saying. Anybody else wondering about? No, nobody cares. Okay. Maybe nobody cares. I don't know. I think that it's a little bit weird that they continue to do this saber rattling all over the world, and yet they really don't have control, do they? Okay. As a matter of fact, one of the things that we need to pay attention to is these kinds of things. So while they're acting like they're going to go around bombing everybody, the U.S. Embassy in Syria tells Americans to leave and warns of potential imminent attacks. And so I do believe the Middle East is going to become a very, very dangerous place to be. I mean, really dangerous place to be here very shortly. The American Embassy in Syria has warned all U.S. citizens to leave the country due to the increased possibility of attacks during the Eid al-Fitr holiday in the end of March, which marks the end of Ramadan in the Muslim world. And so there's a tremendous amount. I mean, this is like the worst time to be threatening Iran and all that. I mean, you're just asking for a confrontation. Just really seems pretty foolish to me, but that is what they are doing. So here we go, folks. We are going to continue to see these things. I'm telling you, this is going to keep manifesting, and we're going to continue to see distractions as well. Did you know that they killed over 10,000 people in the Netherlands in 2024 by euthanasia? So if you are wondering if we're in the days of man losing their minds, look at this. Nearly 10,000 in Netherlands euthanized in 2024, including 219 for psychological disorders, according to a report. Nearly 10,000 people living in the Netherlands were euthanized last year, marking a 10% increase from the year before and a 60% increase in those suffering from psychological conditions. So they just get rid of you. Folks, watch what they are normalizing. Okay? And so this is being normalized for a reason. It's a very dangerous development because we are coming in on some dangerous times. And, they have already made it clear that they see a lot of the population as excess. As a matter of fact, I think everybody knows who this guy is. And, he had some things to say. He believes only 3 jobs will survive AI taking over the workplaces. And so he's very clear about what he thinks about this. And basically he's saying that, if you're not an expert, if you're not a coder, if you're not involved in a creative development, grunt work's going away. Once they have robots that can do any manual task needed, from construction to farming to You just got to realize that a robot's just way more reliable in the sense of from their perspective than people, right? So if they have robots, they can just say, hey, go do this work. Well, then they don't need to worry so much about the people. And this is this has been the plan actually for some time. And so I think that is why you're seeing some of the activity that you're seeing right now. And we're also seeing some distractions. So there's a lot of interesting stories in the news. I'm going to get to one here in a moment. I'm kind of anxious to get to it, but I got to make sure I get everything else in. Did you guys hear about the Tesla bombings that are going on? So you're going to find that story as well on Remnant Watch. Of course, hold on a second. I just closed that. You're going to find out about the Tesla bombings, and that's really a sad thing because that's a sign of also a civil war kind of situation. So we're being provoked into civil war type of behavior, and this is causing a implosion in our economy. This isn't good. Wells Fargo is saying home sales aren't far off. Oops, put this on the screen here. They aren't far off from levels seen in the wake of the Great Recession. So those that are saying it's no big deal and trying to be positive, numbers aren't backing it up. The numbers are saying that we've got a housing crash in the midst of a housing crash. And, all the positivity in the world, all the programs, all the fixer-upper programs, none of that is helping. And part of it is I think people are figuring out that it really shouldn't take 30 years to pay for a house. I think a lot of people are figuring that out. Oh, here's the Tesla story. Here we go. So this is also affecting retail. So it's going to affect businesses. It's going to affect a lot of things. Multiple bombs found inside Tesla showrooms in Texas as threats against Elon Musk continue. This is terrible news because it essentially means for businesses that America is becoming an unhealthy or unsafe environment. What does that do for investment? Nothing good. Nothing good. Seditious liberals aren't telling the truth about lethal new sickness sweeping America. And basically, multiple incendiary devices were found inside a Tesla showroom in Austin, Texas, on Monday morning as the nationwide threats against CEO Elon Musk continue. So this is, obviously very dangerous for the country, for everyone. But I think we're going to continue to see this because you're dealing with two extreme factions, and they are extremes, and they are pulling apart from the middle, and the consumer is going to suffer as a result. So one of the things you're seeing also is sort of the billionaire take their ball, go home program. U.S. stores are closing at a record pace. And so there's a lot of stores that are saying, never mind, I'll go sell somewhere else. We'll take our business and go to a different part of the world and sell there. All U.S. stores closing as retailers face bloodbath. Iconic department stores among those set to go. So this is really, really starting to hit hard. Closing 150 retail stores in the next 2 years. Macy's, of course, we talked about that. We also there's also talk of Walgreens. Excuse me. Sorry about that. A lot of ads here. Do these people think these ads actually work? It's crazy that they think this is effective. There are many stores closing. And again, like I said, the CVS pharmacies, Walgreens are another one that is closing. Oh, they have this Neiman Marcus, Joann Fabrics, Liberated Brands, Kohl's. There's Walgreens that's going down, CBS, Party City. So a lot of retail biting the dust. Because online, look, it didn't take a genius to figure this out. And David, my cousin, will tell you, I wrote about this in 2004, wrote a course about this. And one of the things that we were taking note of is that this digital storm would not go away, that retail would be the victim of it, if you will. And we saw the decimation of the yellow pages. We watched it in real time. It went from a common staple, you had to be in there to be legitimate, to people don't even know what it is anymore. So we watched America shift, and we watched this come in. And it was only a matter of time, folks. because when you can get used to ordering your things and don't need to go to a retail store, well, a retail store actually becomes a very expensive way for a business to function. So transitioning you to the box store or the Amazon model was to their advantage. So that's why this is where we're headed. And this was always where it was headed. They were holding on, these retail stores were holding on for as long as possible, but it was only a matter of time before they would collapse. And so that is a reality. And I think that's what's being reflected in home sales and a lot of other areas. We got more homeless than ever. People are being surprised by the brutality of the world, how brutal it can be, and how easily you can suddenly go from, you're doing great to, no, you're not. Things are not so great. As a matter of fact, people that were trying to lose weight, haven't you heard about this? This is horrible news. But again, pharmakia doing harm to people. So this is a dangerous part. One of the things that we learn as believers not to trust them. Ozempic, I'm losing my mind, memory, sight, speech, and hearing. We did already mention this, but I want to throw it out there again because this is a serious warning, folks. Stay away from these things. They can't give you a story without 50 million ads. So anyway, you can ferret through that one if you like, but essentially they are warning you, if you are paying attention, that you're really not low on lizard venom. So that really isn't the solution to your problem. Whatever it is that you need isn't going to be found in the glands of a lizard. Just saying. I know that some people are looking for any solution for weight loss, and they took advantage of that to put serious poisons in people. And now, of course, this war to reduce the number of people seems to be heating up. So be careful out there. Be very, very careful. And again, there are forces that are looking to go to war, and those in the Middle East are looking to go to war. So I found this story very interesting because this just came out this week. All of a sudden, we saw this news hit out of nowhere. Which, did anybody else find it interesting this week that these things are suddenly coming out? CIA found the Ark of the Covenant by using psychics and declassified files claim. I don't believe them, but I do think it's interesting that they are talking about this. This is in the news. Wow. CIA documents claim the mystical Ark of the Covenant was located by psychics decades ago in the Middle East as part of one of the most intelligence agency's experimental secret projects of the 1980s. Well, Ron Wyatt found it. So you got to decide which one you believe. Okay. And they conducted experiments, Project Sunstreak. So all this stuff, remote viewers, all this stuff is coming out, folks. It's getting really odd out there. We're starting to hear some really bizarre reports and things that we just didn't know was considered part of their normal world, but they apparently didn't think anything of it. So now they're declassifying all this stuff, right? Now, why is that important? Because it's meant to shake your belief in everything. Remember that. Part of their effort, part of their prophecy was they were going to release so many things at once that people would begin to question everything they once believed. And that's very dangerous, right? Because then they can now fix the problem by giving you something new to believe. So stand by, folks, because this new, this level of, information that's been coming at you, these disclosures and what have you, this is all manipulated. None of this is organic. This was all planned and scheduled. I wouldn't be surprised if it's in a spinner going out 2 years and like they got it all set out, because I know there's software that does that literally drops things when it's supposed to and, drops things along the way. So if they've got this stretched out over a time period, they're going to drop little hints and crumbs and things along the way to lead you right where they want to take you. Right to the conclusions they want you to draw. So careful with that because we are, I believe, being major league manipulated, especially through news. So this is an important thing. Speaking of manipulation, this is now getting exposed more and more as we're all realizing that, and now the cancellation of the Department of Indoctrination, which I think is a big step in the right direction. I hope it's a wake-up call to the American parent. I hope it's a wake-up call to moms and dads that you cannot just drop your children off with this, sort of 1950s expectation that golly jeepers, everything's going to be swell, because it isn't. Okay, it isn't going to be swell. You're dropping these children off a lot of times, not always. I'm sure there's great people out there. I'm sure there's good ones. Okay, I'm sure there are. But a lot of times we're finding out that we're dropping our children off and they're monsters. Some of these people are really, they're not fit to be even around children. Look at this. Female special ed teacher. How depraved do you have to be as a special ed teacher? Yeah, I didn't stutter, guys. Special ed. How depraved do you have to be? Okay. You send 25,000 text messages to an 8th grader? What? Former New Jersey special education teacher has been accused of sending 25,000 text messages to an 8th grader student she allegedly molested. And she's 44. Of Jackson was indicted on Tuesday on 7 counts of sexual crimes against an unidentified student, 15, when she allegedly began abusing in 2024, and 25,000 messages later, indicted. And so we take our children and we think, oh, these are good people who have noble intentions, who love children and want to just see their young minds grow. We just want them to blossom, right? And little we know that we're literally dropping them off with this girl, this lady, Allison. Allison, who by all appearances, okay, folks, and you look at her, she's a sweet looking lady. You wouldn't, if you met her, okay, and you dropped your child off, you would think, oh, she's such a nice teacher. Oh, what a great teacher my child has. Oh, I'm so happy he has such a great teacher. How many would look at her and go, what a great teacher. She's just great. She's just awesome. Okay. She's a bud. All right. No, she's not. She's not a bud. She's not awesome. That sweet, darling, wonderful is a monster. And I got to tell you, I am shocked at how often, with nothing more than a smile and a sweet voice, how people are easily fooled. We must be wiser to learn to discern what we're looking at. Okay? Many times we misdiagnose. We think the people that are, harsh and direct with you, you go, oh, I don't like that person. Something wrong with them. No, that's the person you need to trust. The one that being smiley and nice and you think is so wonderful, that's the one that's walking you into a trap. And now the demonic is getting to such a point. I'm telling you guys, and one of the things that's dangerous is video games. If you have to, take them away. And any of you young people that are upset at that, well, just understand it's a matter of self-defense. So if you have a heavy reaction to mom and dad putting a limit on video games, if you react to that, if you're one of those temper tantrum throwing teenagers, are you? Well, then, you need to understand that putting a limit on that is not only for your safety, but for mom and dad's safety as well, because you are underestimating, and I'm talking to you young people out there, or maybe some of you older ones that are still addicted to these things. You need to realize that these video games are designed in some way that I can't figure out. I don't know how it is. I'm not sure I know, but coincidentally, they're always sort of in the backdrop of some really not so great behavior. And here we have yet another example of that. We got 3 Harris County teens. And what are they accused of doing? Trying to kill their mother simply because she was trying to turn off the Wi-Fi. Yeah, guys. Can you imagine your child getting so angry at you that they want you dead because of Wi-Fi? 3 teens are accused of trying to kill their mother because she turned off the Wi-Fi. They allegedly chased her through the house and out into the street with kitchen knives. The woman was hit with a brick but wasn't seriously injured, the sheriff says. 3 teen siblings were arrested in Harris County after allegedly trying to kill their mother because she turned off the Wi-Fi, sheriffs said. Tell me again how there aren't certain demonic forces that are not taking advantage of this Wi-Fi. Tell me again. Okay? So again, you young people, if mom and dad are shutting this stuff off, okay, if they're saying, too much, you spent too much time, and you react negatively, start throwing a fit, that's more evidence that mom and dad are right. Okay? That's saying mom and dad are doing the right thing, taking that away from you. So don't get mad at mom and dad over that. Don't be angry at mom and dad. Don't get upset over that, because they're defending you and protecting you against forces that you are underestimating. And I know it's fun. That's how the devil comes in. He tries to make things fun. The scripture tells us that sin hath pleasure for a season. And so this is the way he moves, the way the devil moves, is he brings in fun for a season, something that seems like, oh, it's harmless, it's no big deal, right? And it turns out that it is a big deal. It turns out it's devastating. So we need to be careful about letting certain things into our lives. So if you're a young person out there and your mommy and your daddy are saying to you, hey, no, we're not doing this, don't go getting upset at them at that. Go give them a hug right now and say, thank you for saving me, Dad. Okay, thank you, Mom, for caring enough about me to say, not my child. You ain't getting my child, devil, not today. Okay, go hug Mom and go hug Dad if they've put that down to help you, because you probably didn't see that coming. I'm pretty sure those 3 boys did not see that coming. Did you guys hear about the Giza pyramids? Again, we talked about this a little bit last week. Well, now experts are now even more confident. I saw a video of it looked like batteries, guys. It looked like coils going under the ground. Crazy stuff. Vast city under the Giza pyramids in Egypt after a new discovery. It's crazy. So this is stuff that's going to keep coming out. It's so exciting. I don't know about you, but I'm having fun. Scientists on a mission to prove the vast city sits more than 4,000 feet below Egypt's Giza pyramids have released a new analysis they say proves the findings to be true. Well, I've already seen video where these guys got all the way down there, so this doesn't look like it. But there is video out there. If you check BitChute, you will find video, guys, of them going down there, and there were like these poles were straight up and down. They were big, too, massive, like columns, and they had these wire windings going all the way up, like looked like they went up the ground. So a lot of interesting things will be coming out in the next short term, which I think will be fun to, maybe some of it will be fun anyway. I mean, we'll be learning a lot anyway about the world and certain things that they hid. So, wow, this is going to be interesting. Not all things are good, though. Some of the things that we're learning about, of course, are bad. And one of the challenges that we're now facing in our world has to do with our bee population. And so those of you that are keeping abreast of these things, yep, it just got worse. Millions of bees have died this year. It's the worst bee loss in recorded history, one beekeeper was saying. And so this is not good for the future. U.S. beekeeping industry is in crisis over the shocking and unexplained death of hundreds of millions of bees over the last 8 months. And it's an unfolding disaster for the industry. Blake Shook, one of the nation's top beekeepers, has found tens of thousands of dead insects at his business. And he said he's never seen losses like this. And so I do think that there are a lot of environmental factors, not the least of which may be sound and frequency. I know that bees are hypersensitive to vibration and frequency. In fact, that's how they fly, right? So you got to kind of wonder, are more frequencies coming into our atmosphere? Are we being bombarded by more than ever before? And is this causing some of the problems that we're seeing with the birds as well as the bees, birds and the bees? Maybe that's why they can't figure out the birds and the bees. Maybe those frequencies are getting scrambled, right? So something for us to keep an eye on. And lastly, Evacuations under the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Israel reveal evidence of the ancient garden supporting the Gospel of John. Did you guys see this? Archaeologists excavating beneath the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem's Old City have uncovered evidence of an ancient garden. And the findings revealed through a landmark excavation conducted as part of renovations in the church showed evidence of the presence of olive trees and grapevines from around 2,000 years ago. This evidence aligns with the Gospel of John's description of the site where Mashiach was crucified and buried. Wow, very interesting, huh? So now you're getting scientific confirmations of the Gospels. How exciting, how wonderful is that? And so I hope that all of you are taking these things as encouragement. Don't allow the narratives that they're spinning to start causing you a loss of your shalom and starting to worry or fret over the world events. After all, Messiah told us and warned us so that we would be prepared. He even told us through the Apostle Paul how people would act. He told us through Apostle Peter. So Apostle John, we got lots of warnings about what we would see. And so when we look around our world and we see exactly what was written, well, we're not really surprised. We're expecting our redemption, which is drawing nigh. And that is our encouragement to all of you, that you would remember that your redemption draws nigh. Well, that's it for today. I pray this broadcast has been a barakah to you. I pray it's an encouragement to you so that none of these things disturb you too much. And we encourage you to join together with your brothers and sisters, supporting one another, loving one another, being a real friend in this hour. After all, that's what we really need, isn't it? We need people that are real. Thank you to all the supporters and friends of Remnant House that make these broadcasts possible. We couldn't do this without you, and we are deeply grateful. Well, that's it for today. May Yahuwah Elohayim Baruch each and every one of you.